Ahoy there, Nickelodeon fans. My name is Captain Eric, and welcome to This Week in Nickelodeon History, where we are going over all of the Nickelodeon shows that either started or ended between the times of January 9th to January 15th. This is episode 42, which means we are 10 episodes away from the finale, the one-year cap of the This Week in Nickelodeon History episodes. Now, one would simply continue on moving forward and just recycle all over again, but I would just be essentially re-recording the same podcast, sometimes with maybe different elements. But that's the thing. I kind of want to shake it up every year and do something new. I don't want to change it up so much that it's just a completely different show. It's obviously celebrating this week in Nickelodeon history. That's the point. But I'm been writing down different ideas as far as, segment options and whatnot. But as listeners of this show, I just want to hear from you if you have any ideas as far as what you would like to see me cover on the show. Do you want more details? Do you want more top fives of episode ideas? If you are, if you actually take those ideas and watch some of these, are those useful for you? Should I do more of those? Should I cover more birthdays, more of the actual Nickelodeon stars? I don't know. I still have some time before we get there. 10 weeks is a long time, so I'm still kind of finalizing stuff, going through things, but I will make a post on all of the social medias coming up of specifically about This Week in Nickelodeon History. Keep an eye out for that. I literally, even if you have a one-word answer towards it and it's helpful in any way, I appreciate it. So keep an eye out for that. I had a tough time getting to want to record this episode this week because of the subject matter in which I was going to have to cover. I wasn't expecting to have to cover another loss here so close after Betty White, and especially so close to my heart, in the same realm as Betty White. But we have to talk about the passing of Bob Saget. Bob Saget, who passed away on January 9th, 2022 at the age of 65. May not be known as a Nickelodeon star, but he was the star of a show known as Full House that aired on Nick at Night for unprecedented 18 years. There are those of you out there who, from the time you were born to the time that you were 18 years old, that Full House may have been airing in your home as a part of Nick at Night. I can tell you that throughout the 90s, Full House was around here or there on ABC in my home, but certainly as a Nick at Night lead-in was always on my television. I watched Full House a lot during the mid-2000s there. If I was just simply, doing things on the computer or painting or cleaning, Full House, even if I wasn't directly sitting down and watching it, was an absolutely wonderful background show to have. Or, how many of you were maybe watching Nickelodeon, let it lapse over to Nick at Night, and Full House may be that one show out of that whole lineup that you would watch, those old shows, which Nick at Night is known for. Those classic legacy shows that get to rerun on syndication. And Bob was the main character of Danny Tanner on that show. For those that have never watched Full House, the show is a multi-camera sitcom about a man who loses his wife unexpectedly and is left alone to take care of his 3 daughters in his home in San Francisco, and gets the help of his brother-in-law, Jesse, and his best friend, Joey, to move into his home to help take care of his 3 growing daughters. And that's where the show starts, and then grows from there. And the show was a staple on their TGIF lineup on ABC for so long, and was such a beloved show. Just trying to get the full numbers here. Full House, just to give credit where credit is due, was created by Jeff Franklin and ran for 8 seasons of 192 episodes. Even coming back for a spin-off on Netflix, I'm sure most of you would know more of, as Fuller House, which ran for 5 seasons of 75 episodes. Full House was a very family-friendly, clean sitcom, but at its core had a very strong heart that really was felt in the character of Danny Tanner. Playing that character is not easy. You're not the cool one. You're not Uncle Jesse. You're not the funny one. You're not Uncle Joey. But you're the one that everybody has to go to talk to and have that heart-to-heart moment. I mean, everybody, can love their talks with Uncle Jesse, but it was Danny Tanner who was the anchor of that show. I mean, he was the man that at the beginning of this show was met with so much loss, but then by the end had such a family surrounding him. It was beautiful. And Bob Saget was a man that wasn't initially now I think he was initially called for to play the character of Danny Tanner. Bob Saget was now outside of playing that role, was known as a big stand-up comedian, was well known within comedy groups and toured the world and toured this country and loved stand-up comedy, and was a fairly filthy stand-up comedian, for those of you who have looked at his stand-up. But I think he was initially wanted for the role of Danny Tanner and couldn't. I don't know, there was some reason where he couldn't make the pilot, and they actually had another actor, John Posey, come in to play the role of Danny Tanner, and filmed an entire pilot with John Posey as Danny Tanner and everyone else in their roles. But there was just something about his role as Danny Tanner that just didn't fit right, and they went back with Bob and said, like, please, can you come do this? And then he came and filmed the pilot, and hey, the rest is history. If you've never seen that initial pilot episode of Full House, I implore you to look it up with John Posey as Danny Tanner. It's like a weird, it's like looking into a multiverse to see a different version of Full House. But Bob played the role absolutely to a T, and Danny Tanner is almost the exact opposite of the kind of character that Bob played on stage during his stand-up acts. Now, you may think, he may have not really appeared on any other Nickelodeon show, and well, Full House doesn't count. That's, Nickelodeon didn't create that, so, why are we talking about him? Well, other than being a staple on the channel, Bob Saget does have a Nickelodeon credit under his belt, because just last year he appeared on the Nickelodeon game show Unfiltered on the season 2 episode Dreamin' of an Awful Waffle that premiered on June 22nd, 2001. I'm able to pull it together right now just out of the sake of recording when you're kind of here doing this, but for a few days I was really tore up about losing Bob Saget. I wasn't just a fan of Full House or a fan. He was also very well known for the hosting of America's Funniest Home Videos. He had such, throughout the 90s, between those two shows, Full House and America's Funniest Home Videos, he was portrayed on television as such a clean, family-friendly guy, but his humor could not be further from that. And let me tell you, if you listen to any of the comics or any of his colleagues in acting and film, anybody who has spoken out about Bob in the last few days, they all repeat the same things of how nice, of how sweet of a man he was, and how legitimately funny he was. And if you watch any interview with Bob Saget, I mean, even what Nickelodeon posted on their YouTube channel the other day, or on their social media, of Bob Saget at the Kids' Choice Awards, this man, even with a crowd of children, is a machine gun of comedy. If you just watch him, and he's just trying to make you laugh with almost every sentence, trying to appeal to a different group and just trying to see what works. he was filled to the brim with funny observations, and just at any point in time let those go. And think about that, trying to be that kind of comic, and then having to play that role on television, and being just known worldwide as Danny Tanner, and have to, and not that it's the worst thing in the world to be worldwide known as a squeaky clean guy, but you know, that's it's not an easy role to play, is essentially what I'm saying. It's not, but he played it to a T, and there's not many other actors I can think of that I would want in that role. If you are of age, given the fact that he is not with us anymore, I would say, hey, look up some of his stand up comedy. Um, Look up. He has a ton of great work out there in terms of comedy. He also has a lot of. I mean, his time on America's Funniest Home Videos was great. I don't really know if there's a way to watch those reruns, but America's Funniest Home Videos was like Twitter or Instagram, or like the best of TikTok for television when there was no internet in the 90s. Like, people had to send in their videotapes of just funny stuff, and they'd have to filter all the really bad stuff out. So you knew it couldn't really be the funniest stuff. There had to be some tapes that were just so funny but couldn't air on television at the time. But I mean, we have shows like Ridiculousness and Tosh Point oh, which take the internet, and all right, if you're still watching television, here's the stuff you're missing out on. But during the 90s, there was no internet that had this kind of content on the regular. So Bob Saget, for as much as we can look back and we can, he was the almost the curator of funny videos throughout the 90s. There wasn't any other way to like see these things. There wasn't a YouTube that you could just go on to and watch people fall downstairs, or stuff that happens unexpectedly and people could just air it up. Like, these things would have to unexpectedly happen as you were filming some family event or something going on in your home. And it would be so funny that you'd then have to pull out the tape, either make I think they would tell you to make a copy of your tape, not send in the original, but then you'd have to like physically mail in a tape to America's Funniest Home Videos. They must have been getting so many tapes per day, and yeah, imagine the stuff being sent that wasn't even meant to be like America's Funniest Home Videos. Just the weird stuff people would send. But absolutely, I love Bob Saget. I bought his book Dirty Daddy when it came out, and he had such a unique perspective on the world. And if you have a unique perspective that I feel like reading more into, I'd buy your book too. And he was somebody that I wish I could have met in person at some point in my life, but unfortunately I can't. But his work will live on. Full House will live on as a staple of 90s television. The work he did on America's Funniest Home Videos should really be remembered a little bit more. And if you can, look up his stand-up comedy. And my condolences just go out to his friends and family out there, anyone out there affected by this. And rest in peace to Bob Saget. I actually wanted to mention a This Week in Nickelodeon History mistake that I made from last week's episode. I forgot to mention that 34 years ago, or was it 2 weeks episode? 2 weeks. Somebody mentioned it. No, yeah, it was last week's. 34 years ago, on January 4th, 1988, was the launch of Nick Jr. as a morning programming block on Nickelodeon. So congratulations to Nick Jr. there. But we are starting with a show that premiered 4 years ago on January 15th, 2018, The Adventures of Kid Danger. Now, Nickelodeon didn't wait for their massive blockbuster show Henry Danger to end before making an animated version of it. They decided to double dip and run an animated version of a show that they had a live action version going on the exact same time. I maybe it was around the time that Henry Danger was in its final season or coming to an end, so their hope was hopefully the show would catch wind and then they can continue the show. But unfortunately, it only ran for one season of 12 episodes. 17 years ago, on January 9th, 2005, we had the premiere of Zoey 101 on Nickelodeon, a live action series that Jamie Lynn Spears, the younger sister of Britney Spears, could lead. It was a vehicle for her after her stint on All That. The show ran for 4 seasons of 61 episodes. 18 years ago, on January 11th, 2004, we saw the premiere of Drake and Josh, a show starring both Drake Bell and Josh Peck, a comedy duo who first saw prominence all the way on The Amanda Show and instantly had chemistry on screen, so much so that they would be given their own show that they led for 4 seasons of 56 episodes, 2 television movies, unless you really Big Shrimp, I guess, counts as a television movie. So three television movies that they got out of Drake and Josh, and would be the also like starring role of Miranda Cosgrove that would help lead her to her breakthrough role of Carly as with iCarly. That would be the show following Drake and Josh. Nickelodeon always did well with their live action sitcoms, and Drake and Josh was no different. You would think, like, following something like Kenan and Kel, that Nickelodeon is just treading water at this point, but no, these shows, even though they're all created by the same guy, and even our last 3 shows here, all baked out of the Schneider's Bakery, you would think they're got to be running out of ideas at this point, but it's really the chemistry of the actors that project these projects from simply just being words on paper to then being watchable and being remembered. And that's why people still talk about Kenan and Kel and Drake and Josh and Zoey 101, and they're all different in their various ways. They're all similar in various ways, but it's all about the actors and the chemistry they have with their ensemble casts. Of course, yes, some has to go to the different format. Zoey 101 was not a sitcom, in like a multicam sitcom. It was more like a single camera kind of setup. But either way, I don't really want to talk about the man himself at the head of all of this. That'll come at another time at some point. But I do want to give credit. I always usually give out the name of the creator of the shows and kind of leave it at that. But I just want to say something here that sincerely, anytime I talk about any of these shows that have been worked on, these movies, if you are a crew member that even slightly worked on that show or that movie, but helped in some way to get it made, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for your work and your contribution and your love of the craft. So if you worked on The Adventures of Kid Danger, if you worked on Zoey 101, and you worked on Drake and Josh, and your name isn't as front and center and as prominent, and please just know, appreciation is all over here. I just want, like, the credits are not enough of these shows, and that's one thing I've said before, my dislike on over the years, the shrinking and shrinking and shrinking of the credits of these shows, because I miss when shows would have just let the credits kind of let you de-wind from what you just watched, and sometimes they would just have a nice little beat that would, be a nice send-off into the next show, and then it just would become a commercial fest, and the people who work on these shows just do not get enough credit. So if you're out there, you worked on any property that I've mentioned, please know, like, I want to give you as much credit as the creators do, especially in this case, because I think a lot of work goes on these shows, especially even the last 3, and it would all created by one person. Now get out of here with that stuff. But anyway, moving on to a show that was not created by that bakery. A show that premiered 20 years ago on January 14th, 2001, Taina, created by Maria Perez Brown. The show ran for 2 seasons of 26 episodes. And last but not least on today's episode, but 24 years ago, on January 15th, 1998, we had the final episode of The Secret World of Alex Mack, created by Thomas W. Lynch and Ken Lippman. The show ran for 4 seasons of 78 episodes and is an absolutely wonderful sci-fi show from what I remember from the 90s. If you are into any sort of sci-fi elements, this is certainly a show I would say is worth checking out. I have not watched an episode in a while. It's a show that's just, it's in a list of shows I'd love to just binge through. But one thing I found really like a little trivia piece about this show is that in Britain, during its British release, the show received a 15 rating from the British Board of Film Classification, which apparently in Britain, like a 15 is pretty like you have to be at least 15, I think, to just get this. Like, it was pretty shocking to everybody over there. Like, wow, this show from this kid show from the 90s has a high rating. And some thought that it had to do with the fact that in the pilot episode, Alex during a scene is shown behind like a clothesline without clothes, quickly, as she's like morphing into, into her human form, she is like implied that she's nude. But it's in fact that in the same episode, the reason that it got the rating, like the official reason, is because in that episode she is shown climbing into a clothes dryer, which of course is an absolutely dangerous thing to do, and as we've seen has been a lot of media that includes anything with like entry or exit out of a clothes dryer have been edited, or there have been a lot of things about this recently. The one thing that come to mind has been Lilo and Stitch was edited on Disney Plus because of Lilo climbing out of a dryer in the original release, and then it's edited to make it look like she's like coming out of just like a cupboard. So it's not giving the idea to kids to get into clothes dryers. And I guess, in over there in Britain, they were like, look, this is an older show. It's aimed for nostalgia purposes anyway, so adults are going to be buying it anyway. It's not really aimed for kids, so who cares that it's got a 15? But I thought that was a pretty like fun piece of trivia, and an easy way for Captain Eric to finally tell you, don't climb into a dryer. Don't do it. It's not worth it. It looks like a fun time, but let me tell you, that ride is not worth getting on. And with that, I'm ending this week in Nickelodeon history. As always, my name is Captain Eric. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of my week. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you for being a part of the Ready Crew. Once again, please keep a lookout. Obviously, if you're listening to this beyond its release date, you can go back and look for that post, but it's not gonna help too much. But keep an eye out for a post in the oncoming weeks, just looking for inquiries on This Week in Nickelodeon History concepts, things you guys want to see, or if you want to see me cover specific topics or reviews, things like that just might make this experience a little bit better. I want to switch it up. We'll take, once episode 52 airs, there will be like a few weeks in between before we kind of restart, just so I can kind of get things put together. But anyway, as always, my name is Captain Eric. We're signing off. Stay safe, everybody. We'll see you here next week.
On the Lord Hut, here we hut, Nick. On the Lord Hut, here we hut, Nick. On the Ricky Ticky Low, while living #1 Nickelodeon.